26th or 27th version of this, the Afternoon of Remembrance. My name is Tom Cito, and I'm a animation artist and teach at USC, and I was president of this guild for in the 1990s. We began this event years ago, I think originally starting in 1994. Generally, when a very well-known animation artist like Chuck Jones or someone like that, or Frank Thomas would pass away, there would be a memorial event and everybody would go to it. That'd be a big thing. And that year, I think 3 famous well-known animation people died in 1 month. I think it was Friz Frayling, John Hallis, and Preston Blair. And we thought, wow, each person is worth, a big memorial thing. What should we do? And then the idea was floated, let's wait to the end of the year and honor everybody. So everybody from trainees to producers, from first-timers to animation legends, all the variations to do with the creation of animation. Would be honored, and it's a chance not only for family but also for for colleagues, for the people that that you worked with over these years, to say goodbye to our and acknowledge our friends. And this event has been very successful over the years. We've had a lot of people, and as animation itself has become more international, we have sort of a lot more productions, a lot more shared co-productions being done around the world. We're getting a lot more people, from other parts of the world in as well, and really, recognizing our global family, our global animation community. So I want to thank all the people that are also tuning in from distant places and from way out our time zone. This event is being recorded, and then it'll be available to be watched later on for people in other time zones. So we have a lot of people to talk about today. Here's how it breaks down. Each speaker, a designated speaker, is getting 3 minutes to talk. And now 3 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but when you really think about it, for all of us who deal with seconds and increments, it's like 6 TV commercials in a row. So that's a lot of time, when you actually think of it. So try to keep it around 3 minutes if you can, because again, we have 84 people, and it's going to be a marathon. We're going to go on for a while. What we're also doing is that we're taking all the famous voice actors, because when you look at the list, there's people like Christopher Plummer and Ed Asner and Cloris Leachman. Obviously, they probably don't have relatives or family at this event. So what we're doing is that we're putting them all aside, and we've created a tribute to a montage of all their work that we're going to run at the halfway point. So you'll be able to acknowledge them as a group. There's a couple of exceptions, like Will Ryan, who was very important to ASIFA and to the animation community, and was really part of the community. Like years ago, June was a big factor in a lot of our animation family. So, but otherwise, the actors will have their own section. So let us begin. When you look at the program, you'll see the list of all the honorees. A few people move in and out of the order in order to accommodate their time. So the first person we're going to acknowledge is the artist, Olivier Jean-Marie. And speaking for him is someone speaking from France right now, Marc du Pontavis. Marc, are you there? Let's see. Okay, well, let's move on, and then when he comes in.
I'm sorry. Mark is now a panelist, and he can unmute.
Oh, great. Okay. So, Mark, unmute.
All right. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm really glad that to be here, very honored to be able to speak about Olivier Jomari, who was an extraordinary creative companion. He really was the true pillar of the Imagination First Studio for more than 2 decades. He was an animator, he was a director, a writer, and a creator. He wrote about 150 episodes of various film series. Among them, he directed Space Goose, about 300 episodes of Augie and the Cockroaches. He directed and wrote many episodes of the series, 2 feature films. One is called Go West, and another one called Augie the Movie. But he was also a creator, and he created and directed the series Zig and Charcoal, which is so popular nowadays, as well as Augie and the Cockroaches. And he also created another series called Welcome to the Bronx for Disney Channel. Olivier was a strong and charismatic personality. He has taught and trained so many Zilam animators. Nowadays, Zilam Animation has about 12 directors in-house. They all owe him something, as he was such a visionary and a leader. We miss him every day. He's in our hearts and behind our pencils. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. That's wonderful. Okay. Next, we're going to honor Edwin Aguilar. And speaking about Edwin Aguilar is Mark Kirkland. I know Mark is here. We're just going through the links here. Oh, I see him.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay. We got you.
Here I am. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Tom, and everybody with the union for doing this. It's a really honor and privilege to talk about my dear friend, Edwin Aguilar. Edwin, I met on The Simpsons. And Edwin, for those who don't know his background, he was born in war-torn El Salvador. And there were a lot of dangerous situations he lived through in El Salvador. He was hiding under beds in his house as bullets would fly through it, and it was extremely treacherous. And he made an epic journey to get to the United States as a young man. And then where does he land? He lives in East LA in a gang-ridden area. And from a very young age, he was carrying a revolver, he told me. And he was stabbed a couple of times, shot at, and he was taken away in a gurney a couple of times thinking his life was over. Someone noticed that he had artistic ability, and he got a scholarship to Art Center. And from there, he joined Graz Entertainment, and then he found his way to Hanna-Barbera, where I used to work, and eventually Chuck Jones, and eventually The Simpsons. Now, he worked on The Simpsons as an artist, a layout artist, for over, we worked together for over 20 years, and he joined The Simpsons in 1999, and he thought it was going to be a temporary job. And anyway, he remained there, and he became my assistant director on The Simpsons in 2007, and I would say we worked together. I directed, and he was my assistant director for over 30 episodes. And we shared an office. So you really get to know someone when you share an office. And Edwin, his family was so important to him, and his work was so important to him. And, whenever anybody felt they were having a bad day, we would talk to Edwin and get a real perspective on life. And he was so pleased to be part of the team. And as his health failed over time, you know, I said to him, Edwin, you know, you really could take disability and just take it easy. And he said, no, this is where I want to be. And he loved the animation community, and he loved being part of it. And we all loved Edwin, and we all miss him very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That's great. Okay, so we're skipping over Jack Angel and Ed Asner because they're going to be in the video tribute after the intermission. And we're going on to Dale Bear. And speaking for Dale Bear, we have a message from producer Don Hahn and Wayne Carlisi.
Hi, it's Don Hahn with a quick word about Dale Bear. As if he needs another word, you know, when I first started working with Dale, I just thought, wow, what a amazing animator, what a terrific gentleman. And I really got to know that when we were working on Roger Rabbit and we were in trouble in getting the movie done. And I was working with Richard Williams, the animation director. We were trying to think who could bail us out, who could be a terrific world-class animator, who could direct a unit in Los Angeles, and Dale Bear. And Dick said, yeah, Dale Bear. And he did. He came in and put a unit together and did the Toontown sequence and a bunch of other material that was just spectacular. He is a gentle giant. He reminds me a lot of John Lounsbury, who is a powerful draftsman, a powerful animator. I could watch Dale's animation all day long, and I got to work with him just last year on a project for Beauty and the Beast at Epcot Center that was just magnificent working with him again. So I love you, Dale. I miss you, and will not forget you, and your work will live on for a long, long time. God bless you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Wayne Carlisi, and I'm going to say a few words about my good friend Dale Bear, who we just lost. He passed away. I'll tell you a little story. When I first met Dale, I got hired over at Bear Animation Studios. And Dale had told everybody that I was there for about 6 months. Dale had told everybody, look, if anybody wants to apply to get an animation position, do a pencil test, and he'll look it over, and he'll give you feedback on it, and maybe you'll get a job as an animator. So I did a pencil test for him, and I remember I showed it to him, and he was very quiet. That was the thing about Dale. He was a gentle giant. He was just very quiet, but not in an arrogant way. He was basically shy. He was a shy person with incredible talent. You know, he was one of the top animators still to this day. He's one of my favorite animators of all time. Anyway, he gave me a test to do a Pluto, and I did the test. I was so nervous. I thought he was going to fire me, but he just had one change, and he was just extremely humble. And that's really what I want to talk about more than anything about Dale. We already know he was a great talent. He was just top notch. But he never acted like it. He was so quiet and humble. But he was so kind to everybody. I don't remember any time Dale getting angry. He was running a studio. I mean, it was a big-time studio, commercial house. You know, his studio did all of Toontown and Roger Rabbit. He just didn't have an ego. It just wasn't who he was. As I got to know him more and more, I tell you what I really learned from him was how to be more of a better human being. As I got to know him, he was truly one of the most egoless people that I'd ever met in my life. But he had such a passion for it, and that was the thing also, was his love of the art form. So then he met Teddy, his wife, and they got married, and after that, Dale got ill and passed away. I just want to say that I adore Dale Bear. I used to call him Captain My Captain because he was so great at the art form, but he was so much as great as a human being. I just want to say, Dale, I love you. Teddy, I love you, and you will be sorely missed. And that's it. Goodbye, Dale. I love you.
Great. Now we're going to pause to remember Bob Baker, screenwriter, and speaking about, we've got a speech about him from Gail Renard, and it's going to be read by Beck.
Okay, hi everybody. This is actually a speech from posted online by the Writers Guild of Great Britain treasurer, Gail Renard, paying tribute to Bob Baker, who was an Oscar and BAFTA award-winning film and television screenwriter and a longtime supporter and member of WGGB, the British Writers Guild. Bob Baker was I said that, Oscar and BAFTA winning television writer and Writers Guild stalwart. His impressive writing career spanned over 50 years. Bob and his late writing partner, Dave Martin, wrote dozens of classic Doctor Who episodes during the John Portwee and Tom Baker years. They had a prolific partnership, which Dave described as a little bit like a marriage without the sex. They also created the Doctor's much-loved canine companion called K9. And Bob was forever proud they maintained the rights to that character, following the example of Terry Nation and the Daleks. It was a time the BBC didn't realize that merchandising could make a fortune. Lucky guy. It might be said that Bob had a penchant for writing for dogs, because in 1993 he joined forces with animator Nick Park to co-write the Wallace and Gromit short film, The Long Trousers, for which they won an Oscar for Best Animated Film and a BAFTA for Best Animation. They also collaborated on other Wallace and Gromit films, including A Close Shave, Curse of the Were Rabbit, and A Matter of Loaf and Death. In his non-dog work, Bob wrote for series as varied as Cars, Target, Bergerac, and his groundbreaking and edgy children's series Into the Labyrinth. Bob returned to K9 in 2010, writing and producing a new series, K9. Adventures. In addition to his screen work, Bob also wrote his autobiography, K9 Stole My Trousers, a combination of his Doctor Who and Wallace and Gromit work, and a children's book, Flora's World Storybook. I've never known a time when Bob wasn't busily working on his next project and eager to share the details over lunch. He had recently completed scripts for both a new K9 series, film and TV series, which are currently in pre-production and which will continue in tribute to him. Bob took tremendous pleasure in his work and many enthusiasms, including wine and jazz. A joyful man, he will be missed by his family and friends, of whom I was lucky to count myself as one. That's Gail's, her condolences, and our condolences to Bob's wife of 30 years, Marie, and his children and grandchildren. Thank you.
We're now going to honor Brenda Banks. And speaking of Brenda Banks is animated director Terry Lennon. There you are.
There I am. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Terry Clemens, and I'd like to say a few words on behalf of Brenda Banks. I first met Brenda some 40 years ago. We were both working on she's Lord of the Rings. And, we had quite an enormous staff at that time. There was probably about 350 people working feverishly rotoscoping for Lord of the Rings. And Brenda was one of them. And really stood out. Brenda was autistic, and I believe she was probably the first autistic person that I met within my social circle. Later in life, my youngest daughter, Megan, was diagnosed with autism, and so I know the difficulties and challenges of it. Brenda was very high functioning though, and she was a really good animator. Just really enjoyed working with Brenda. I can't picture her face without seeing a smile on it. And, if she wasn't smiling, there was a smile in her eyes. We worked together at Lord of the Rings, and then some years later, when I was directing some short films with Warner Brothers with Craig Ford, we hired Brenda to animate a few of the classic Warner Brothers characters. And like so many people in the animation business, there's just such a love for the business and the craft. And Brenda had that. She was autistic, but very high functioning. And but nonetheless, autistic. Socially, she was very awkward. Kind of feature of autism. She very, very happy when she was animating. I remember at Warner Brothers passing by her cubicle and she was laughing. I stopped in and said, "Hey, Brenda, what's so funny?" She said, Daffy Duck. She was animating a Daffy Duck scene and just really having fun with it, getting into it. She was just a delightful person. And we always kept in touch over the years. It was sadness that I learned about her passing away earlier in the year. But on this day of remembrance, celebrate the lives of all our friends and colleagues. I knew Brenda really misses her. Thank you. Peace and love, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Mark. Terrific. Okay, great. So we're now going to honor Noreen Beasley. We don't have a regular speaker for Noreen Beasley, so I'm just gonna say I remember Noreen was she worked in layout and she was also character design a Disney feature at Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera, and she was a terrific artist. That's Noreen. We're now going to skip over Ned Beatty because he's going to be with the actors. Go to Vinnie Bell. Coming with Vinnie is Kate Cook. Snowy.
Yeah, it's pretty cold here. But yeah, so I met Vinnie Bell the summer of 1971 when I was a gopher, which is the old term for intern at Perpetual Motion Pictures. Vinnie was already a star in New York, starting at Terry Tunes, and then he worked at most of the studios around town, including the Hubleys, Pintoff Productions, where he animated the Oscar-nominated The Interview. At Perpetual, Doug Crane was the animator on staff, while Vinnie liked to work at home, keeping his own hours. And what he'd do is take a job that required 10 days of do it in less than 2 weeks, come to the studio, with his fabulous cleanup artist, Tony Priazzo. They flip the scenes for Hal Silverman and Buzz Hampkin, and then the two would go off to play golf. And days later, when the agency had the inevitable changes, they'd come back and work on spare desks and clean those up very quickly. Later on, when Perpetual grew, Vinnie Bell did come to work in-house because he and Vincent Caparelli got to share the corner windowed office together. And that was when they were doing the half-hour Berenstain Bears holiday specials and Strawberry Shortcake in Big Apple City. They worked together, Vinnie Bell and Vincent Caparelli, at Len Glasser's Stars and Stripes studio, animating many of the Clio-nominated ads. They had a long and deep friendship. The two Vinnies, they had each other's back, whether it was in work or relationships or just joking around. And Vinnie continued to work with us when Vinnie Caparelli and I ran Busco Associates. And when Vinnie Caparelli passed, Vinnie Bell was a great comfort to me. Later on, when Vinnie Bell had his own health issues, he couldn't work anymore, but at the senior center, he continued to draw cards, post to neighbors, sing in the chorus, he had a fabulous voice, he wrote Frank Sinatra, and kept up with old friends. And often my husband Chuck and I would visit him whenever we drive up to Connecticut. We'd have breakfast with him at his favorite diner. He always looked forward to our December visit, especially because we bring him the Busco brownies. During one of my last visits, he brought out something which I had long forgotten. While I was still an intern at Perpetual and grateful for some stage animation device, I knit him a set of golf club covers. And remember, this is the early 70s, wild and woolly. Each cover was a turquoise background, and the number of the club was equal to the number of pink lit naked ladies in various suggestive positions. I was touched that he still had them, and we both laughed looking at them again. And when I asked his sons if they had found them, sadly no, so I couldn't share that picture. But rest in peace, dear Vinnie. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to honor John Alberto Bendazzi. Is Charles Solomon online yet? He's very good at coming to these things, so he's been held up. Anyway, let's put off Bendazzi for now. We'll come back to him. And let's move on and talk about Kirk Benson. So speaking for Kirk Benson is Rich Appel.
I just want to say first that I'm honored to be part of this. The very first time I was ever a showrunner was at King of the Hill back in 1998. And when I say showrunner, trust me, I'm using the term very loosely. A couple of months after I started there, The Sopranos premiered. And when people used to refer to me as the showrunner, I used to correct them and say I was the showrunner the same way Junior Soprano was the boss of the crime family, the center of that show. Now, anyone who's seen The Sopranos knows that Junior was just the boss in name only. Tony was the actual boss. And that is where Kirk fits in. I came to King of the Hill having overseen precisely 0 episodes of television from start to finish. I'd sit in the editing room with the entire King of the Hill production team watching cut after cut, everyone waiting for my opinion, and I'd turn to Kirk and say things like, so the differences between the 3 versions you just showed us are, jump in and explain it. I of course understood. And I'd say something like, so it sounds like you picked version, and he'd answer. And then I'd pretend to consider my options. I agree with Kirk. Kirk was my first teacher. So much of whatever I know about editing and directing and telling stories in a visual medium, I learned by his side. He was the most self-facing and modest teacher anyone could ever have. Funny, engaging, always upbeat, a master of his craft, Kirk was the ideal colleague who soon became a great friend. After 3 seasons of King of the Hill, I asked Kirk to join me on a new live action series, and once again, I had him by my side, this time not just in the editing room, but on stage every take night. I wouldn't move on to the next scene until Kirk told me we got everything we needed. He was a better distinctive director than just about any director I've ever worked with. 4 seasons of The Cleveland Show, and I can't tell you how many times he saved a scene, even an episode, and edited it with hugely creative fixes that didn't require new animation. Every editing room of his was reliably filled with laughter, occasionally, even because it was on screen. But as talented as Kirk was at his job, as expert and efficient as he was, that's not what I'll always remember about him. Here's the truth about Kirk. I never, not once, left his company without feeling happier than I was when I arrived. It's a very rare quality to count on in any colleague and friend. He was a joyous man. He took joy from his work, from his deep and loving friendships, from his family, and from the rest. It's so hard to believe that someone who was so full of life, so full of goodwill, so full of energy and enthusiasm and laughter is no longer with us. Our only solace is that, paradoxically, through the fullness of our memories and his spirit, he'll always be with us. May he rest in peace.
Thank you very much. We're now going to honor Jamie Keslarian Bolio. Is Jamie's mom Kathy here?
I believe we have a pre-recording.
Great. Okay, good.
Jamie Bolio's mother. I was asked to tell you a little bit about her, what her life was like personally. She was an artist almost from the time she got a pencil in her hand. She was about 1.5 years old when she drew this picture of her grandfather, my dad. The black circles are not earmuffs. That's his hair. When I saw this drawing, I knew she was talented and that her gift needed to be nurtured. Athletics were an important part of Jamie's growing up years. She was on baseball, basketball, and swim teams during middle and high school. It was during this time that she became an activist, going on marches from climate change to women's rights, participating in causes that were important to her. She attended Albion College in Michigan, and during her junior year, she studied at the University of Stirling in Scotland. It was while she was in Europe that her travel bug began. She graduated from Albion with a dual degree in fine arts and psychology. She returned to Europe and got a job at Amblimation Studio in London, where she worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Five Goes West. She decided to apply to law school, especially wanting to be a voice for the underserved or oppressed. And while waiting for the results of the law school admission test, a friend called and suggested she come to California and work at Disney. There, I think, for 13 years, and it may have been during this time that she became a member of the SEPA House. When Disney made the decision to transition from 2D into 3D, she enrolled in Pepperdine University and received her master's degree in clinical psychology. She began working in a shelter for abused children, but resigned when she became aware of and disagreed with the treatment of those children who were in her care. Jamie always realized the importance of her Armenian heritage and identity. It was during her time in California that she found a wonderful Armenian tutor who taught her how to speak, read, and write the language. She was quite fluent when she made her trip to Armenia, and soon after took my Armenian maiden name as Larry. She returned to the art field and was hired as the director of a for-profit college where, again, she was disillusioned. She was appalled by the treatment of students and the dishonest promises made to them. About this unfairness, she was terminated. From then on, you are most likely familiar with her most recent life in animation. She loved being involved with and promoting independent, two-dimensional animated films. She started her own business, 62 George Street, and began working with G Kids, meeting and working with Tom Moore, Nora Toomey, and others
at Cartoon Saloon in Ireland, the National Film Board of Canada, and finally faculty with Bruno Felix at Submarine Studio in Amsterdam. Jamie loved Amsterdam and began learning the Dutch language. She spent much time studying, and I know this because she came home here to Michigan in April to get her COVID vaccinations and booster. It was during the end of her 5-month stay, diverticulitis, which resulted in being hospitalized, and she unexpectedly and tragically died during surgery. Those who knew Jamie were very well aware that she not only embodied all those principles, values, and beliefs that were important to her, but she was a champion for them as well, and never hesitated to express her feelings about them. She was empathetic to countries suffering and the pain and conflicts all over the world. She was compassionate, loving, kind, and cared very deeply about the people in her life. She especially adored her father and me, as well as her brother Rob, his wife Lily, and their 2 children, Kaylee and Marianne. Jamie was truly an extraordinary young woman. Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to honor Jane Bonnet. And speaking about Jane Bonnet is Marianne Tucker. I think Dave Brain's going to read it. So.
It was great. Guess what? We both ended up with a taco. I ordered. Did that what you got? Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Dave, you're
Dave,
you're muted. You're muted. Yeah, now I can.
Try again.
Yeah, start over.
Her full name was Jane Tucker Bonnet. She was about 35 years old when she entered the animation business. She was then divorced mother of twin girls who had recently moved to California from Texas. Her father had worked for an international oil company, and she had been raised briefly in India and then for years in Colombia, and spoke Spanish fluently. The day she started training at Disney Features in 1982 was the same day John Tucker came back from layoff. John, 10 years her senior, was her cousin and hadn't seen her since they were kids. They reconnected in the HR waiting area. Jane, who had drawn and designed her own pleasure for her own pleasure, and having been told often that she should pursue art as a profession, completed her training at Disney and got her first credit on the Black Collar as an assistant animator. She went on to have assistant and key assistant credits on 11 Disney features. During that time, she and her girls became close with John and Marianne Tucker and their girls. Jane bought a craftsman house in Pasadena and raised her girls there. In their 20s, the daughters moved to Northern California. Jane quit Disney and became a court interpreter in the Sacramento area. This, of course, enabled her to keep her family more easily connected. That's about Jane Bonnet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to talk about Rick Bowman, and speaking about Rick Bowman is Irene Exter. Okay, we can hear you.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes. We have a problem here. Okay. Hi, Tom. I'm Irene Exter, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my husband about our friend Rick Bowman, who passed away March 19, 2021. This is a compilation of remembrances of his younger brother Chris and Bill. Hi, Chris. Rick was born in Canada, January 7, 1952, the second of 3 sons of 2 World War II veterans. His English mother was serving with the Women's Land Army, and his father, a decorated soldier, was serving with the Canadian infantry, and he was posted to England. They met, fell in love, and the English girl became Canadian war bride in 1946. Rick wanted to work in animation, so he attended Sheridan College, renowned for its animation program. He was there from 1972 until he graduated in 1976. This was where his dream of being an animator began. In 1978, while working for Michael Mills Studios in Montreal, Rick was thrilled when Hanna-Barbera offered him a job working on the Flintstones. He accepted, bid farewell to his family in Canada, and moved to the bright lights of Hollywood. His dream was becoming true. It was at Hanna-Barbera that Mick met his future wife, Anne Hamilton, who worked as a painter there. Rick worked at most of the major studios, but his time at Walt Disney in London, where he worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Can't Get Rabbits Out, was for him a highlight of his career. He went to Korea, supervising on The Simpsons and Muppet Babies, and while there, he did some freelance work, but used his English grandfather's name to honor him, as he was a person the family felt that his talent had come from. Bill met Rick in 1995 when they both worked at Marvel. They both loved animation, and that cemented their friendship. One of Rick's greatest pleasures was when he met the animators who were part of the Walt Disney production of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Italian food was another common denominator, so Bill introduced Rick to Lido's Pizza, and they met there every 2 weeks for 25 years. In February 1997, Rick and Anne were married. Anne had a daughter from Ashley for a previous marriage, so became an indulgent stepfather who delighted giving things to this teenager that only a teenager would want to have. In February 1997, Rick and Anne were married apparently, and okay, I'm sorry, I missed out that he gave her the items that she would love to have, and he was so happy to provide. It was a good sentence till I messed it up. Ashley went on to also work in the animation film. Unfortunately for both, Anne passed away too early in life in January 2010. Rick retired in January 2014, but he continued doing storyboards for his own pleasure. He enjoyed golfing and even won a few tournaments while working at Walt Disney. As you will see from the photographs, he also loved on planes and was a pilot, obtaining his pilot's license in 1991. Of Rick, it can be said that the loves of his life were his family, Lido's Pizza, flying, and animation. We were all shocked when he suddenly passed away. His family and friends miss him. It's our fondest hope that Rick is playing a few rounds of golf, flying some of those old planes that he loved so much, and is still plying his pencil and drawing his storyboards. Unfortunately for Rick, Lido's only delivers here on Earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like Lido's Pizza too. It's pretty good.
Who does not?
Next, we're going to honor Peter Brown. And speaking on behalf of Peter Brown is Doug Williams.
I say he was one of the warmest people anyone would want to have as a friend. He was a bold personality, but had an innocence about him as well. Funny, charming, sometimes annoying. That was Peter. He was an immigrant who was living in Korea and Southeast Asia, where he resided since 2001. Hardworking and hard playing, Peter was a motorcycle enthusiast, and his dog Bazzer was a regular passenger, tucked inside his jacket when they cruised the highways and byways of Korea and beyond. Peter co-founded Mad Dog's Motorcycle Club in the Philippines when he moved to Manila in 2010. His Mad Dogs helped to fund an orphanage and raise money for other charitable causes in the Philippines. wonderful sense of humor. In any gathering, you can count on him to be entertaining. He might mingle around a crowded room with the waistband of his trousers hiked up to his chest in friendly style. Or, after sitting quietly, sharply yell out, then grin stupidly at all of the startled faces nearby. Peter was often silly. Some even said he was idiotic. That person was usually me. Peter once told me, in this world there are lions and there are sheep, and that he was a lion. He ended that statement with, "Shamu, mother bleeper." Shamu, mother was Peter's verbal articulation of a mic drop. I laughed and rolled my eyes, because in my mind, he was more of a nut than king of the jungle. But upon reflection, Peter's zest for life and fearlessness to put himself out there, to succeed or fail, really did make him a lion. Shamu, mother bleepers, was the final text message Peter sent to his closest friends before he died. He left us with a smile in our hearts. You are remembered, old friend. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to honor designer Barry Bruce, and speaking about Barry is Mark Gustafson. Mark, are you there yet?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, you got the floor.
All right. I was about 20 years old when I met Barry Bruce, and he was unlike anyone I had ever met before. He was an immensely talented artist, a sculptor, designer, animator, architect, teacher, writer, director. And my first job was under his mentorship. And as I look back on it right now, I can't quite imagine how he didn't just strangle me right there, because I knew nothing about animation and I knew hardly anything about life. But he didn't. He was patient and generous and kind. And with a kid like me who was fresh out of art school. As a young man, I was in awe of Barry. We all were. A fresh group of artists had just joined Will Vinton Studios in Portland, Oregon, back in the early 80s. Me among them. And he took us in under his wing. He taught us what it meant to be professional at our work and how to still have fun. His mentorship in all things great and small was like the pebble in the stream. The ripples radiating out, now reflecting in all the ongoing careers of those of us who he nurtured so carefully. All this he did with style, humility, and a biting humor, as dry as the bones he loved to collect from the high desert country. Barry never sought to be the center of attention. He showed us the way with dignity and grace. His gravity was a curious blend of practicality and mystery that pulled one in. When he spoke, the room listened. He would no doubt be appalled to hear me praising him so much. Oh, Barry, thought of that before you went off and died. Now I can say all the nice things about you. He used to give me gems of wisdom. I was so naive with these little notions and concepts. And one of the things I remember him talking to me about one day was the idea of the signal to noise ratio. I had never heard of. It
It's the amount of useful information compared to background-wise. I reflect on Barry and his life. I realized that a lot of us live our lives generating noise, but not Barry. He left us a very clear signal out across the universe. Work hard, be kind, and embrace the magnificent absurdity of this existence. It is my hope that when the definitive history of animation in Portland is written, Barry will take his rightful place as a pioneer to help revolutionize the industry. I know that I would not be here. Thank you. We're going to talk about Alan Burns. There's not a regular speaker for Alan Burns right now, but Alan was one of the mainstays of the J. Ward studio. He was like one of the top writers, along with Chris Jenkins and Bill Scott. He created Dudley Do Right. He created Super Chicken. They created a lot of great stuff. That's when they really kind of created the new paradigm for TV animation, which up to that point, animation was all pantomime. Like everybody was trying to do Chaplin, sort of Buster Keaton, which is a lot of complicated animation. Jay Ward's group shifted over to dialogue, saying that you could do animation more economically for television if you emphasize the writing over the physical action. And Alan was like one of the great comedy writers. After Jay Ward, he went on to the Mary Tyler Moore Show and the Big Van Dyke Show, and he was a very important writer for series sitcoms. And I always like to think that he had an influence on one of the interns on Mary Tyler Moore named James Rose, who later became the senior producer of the show. So, rest in peace, Alan Burns. Next, we're going to talk about Mike Camarillo. Speaking about Mike is Melanie Pava. Okay, we see you.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Mike Camarillo, born in Honolulu, grew up in Pearl City, Hawaii, attended Cal Arts for experimental animation from '84 to '88, getting his first job in animation on The Simpsons. I met him at Hyperion in '92. At first glance, he looked kind of fierce, but at second glance, you could see the sparkle in his eye. Somebody found a giant in the ladies' room that was too big to kill, so we called for some brute force. I can still see Mike gently carrying it down to the street. We'd walk to lunches and take little at the Ben and Jerry's below the studio, where we discovered his love of ice cream. He'd get a pint and he'd eat it like a push-up. A few of us took a houseboat trip together and we bonded. Thanksgivings, holidays, birthdays. He had amazing taste, and if he got you a present, he nailed it. I cut his mohawk, and he would carry giant boulders up my hill. He was selfless, the guy that would pick you up at LAX at midnight, even if he begged you not to. When I decided I wanted to get into a backski method, Mike was so creative, so talented, there was nothing he couldn't do. From prop design to BB design to effects animation to creating his own shows, Bushido eggs, hand and foot, bums, and Pullaput. He always had something he was working on. The next time we worked, which was especially good for the ice cream, but it was also good to work with Mike. He was stress-free. He was a minus on the drama scale. He always got his office lost, and he always be well. While at DreamWorks, Mike attends a wedding in New Orleans. He comes where he meets this Australian woman, Elizabeth. We tease him, of course, but we also tell him if he brings her back here, he'll have a built-in circle of friends. He is one of my dearest friends too. And they are married and have two sons, Timmy and Vincent, two remarkable humans, talented, sensitive, sweet like their dad and their mom. Family meant everything to Mike, both immediate and extended. I think he was happiest in their company, flunking away on his latest project, a tub of men theater, personality. We will miss you forever, Mikey.
Thank you, Melanie. We're now going to honor Ron Campbell. And speaking about Ron Campbell is Scott Siegelbaum.
Against a brain, I'm going to read Scott Siegelbaum's tribute. It seems as if Ron Campbell animated my childhood, beginning in 1958 in his native Australia with cartoons for King Features. Campbell's career spanned the golden age of Saturday morning cartoons. During that span, 50 years and 1 month, he wore many hats: animator, storyboard artist, writer, director, and producer. As a boy, when he went to movies on Saturday morning, there would be hilarious cartoons. When he mentioned this to his grandmother, she replied they were just thousands of drawings. He thought, "You mean I can make drawings and they can come alive?" In Sydney in the 1950s, there was little opportunity for animators. Ron enrolled in an art school just as television was being introduced to Australia. For the first time, there was a need for animators for commercials. He pounded on doors, insisting he could animate for those commercials. His first job was to animate a bug spray spot that featured a centipede with 100 legs. Ron was hired by King Features and Al Brodax in New York to animate Popeye, Beetle Bailey, and Crazy Cat. He finished on time and on budget. In 1964, he got a call in the middle of the night, daytime in New York, from Brodax telling him that he had sold a new show and he would direct the episodes being produced in Australia. Ron asked about the show. "It's called The Beatles," replied Brodax. "That's great," Ron said, "but insects make terrible characters for children's cartoons." The success of the Beatles Saturday morning cartoon series made Ron a hot commodity, and he moved the family to Hollywood. He worked briefly at Hanna-Barbera and opened his own studio, Ron Campbell Films, across the street from him. Ron produced cartoons for Sesame Street and animated on George of the Jungle, Tom Slick TV shows. He produced the animation for The Big Blue Marble and won many awards, including a Peabody and an Emmy for Best Cartoon Show of the Year. In the late 60s, working with Dwayne Crowther, Ron was tapped again by Al Brodax to do animation on the Beatle feature film The Yellow Submarine. Ron and Dwayne animated many scenes during including the Sea of Time sequence, and the scenes including the Chief Blue Meanie. In the early 1980s, Ron storyboarded on Hanna-Barbera's many hit series. In the 1990s, TV for direction and storyboarding on Bonkers, Goof Troop, Darkwing Duck, and Winnie the Pooh. He storyboarded on Klasky Csupo's Rocket Power and Duckman and received Emmy nominations for his work on and The Real Monsters and Rugrats. Ron put his pencil down after the last episode on Ed, Edd and Eddy and called it a career. To stay active in retirement, Ron began painting. He decided to paint subjects based on animated cartoons he worked on, with a particular emphasis on the Beatles. Ron and I toured with his artwork in galleries throughout the world in a presentation called Rock Art Show. Ron was struck by how much these children's cartoons meant to people. He would frequently sketch Scooby-Doo for a child. One instance that illustrated the joy that Ron brought people during these exhibitions happened when a young woman approached to tell him how much the Smurfs meant to her growing up, but she felt sad that Smurfette had yellow hair while she had brown hair. Ron promptly drew a Smurfette for her and colored the Smurfette's hair brown. The woman broke out in tears. It really touched her.
Ron passed away on January 22nd, 2021 at the age of 81 from complications after heart surgery. He leaves behind a wife of 59 years, Elgelina, 2 daughters, 6 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. That was Ron Campbell.
Thank you very much. I used to pick up from Ron Campbell too, when he was across the street from HB. I remember that. I think Peter Aries was his production. Okay, we're now going to honor Sam Cornell. And speaking about Sam Cornell is
Thank you, Tom. By the way, thank you and everyone else for years of putting this on. So, let's talk about Sam. He was one warm, sweet, funny guy. A layout man, he was a director, he was a producer, and he's also a partner in his own production company. I met Sam, I think it's his first job, but I was called in to do some freelance work by Bob Curtis at John Wilson's Fine Arts company. And we're working on Billy Wilder's Irma Lipton's opening title.
Oh, yeah, back here.
Sam was there. Again, as I said, it was probably his first job. And he never left the desk.
Here's some more back there, I hope.
So wide-eyed, it was wonderful. And anytime anybody talked, you'd look at him, you know, and it was like he was absorbing all this information. So we used to run into each other off and on. And he was always a delight to see. And one time, the great Bob Dranko, who was probably the best ball around, and I were doing freelance layout for Jay Ward on George of the Jungle, Super Chick, and Tom Terrific. And so we happened, when we were dropping off our work, we happened to run into each other because we knew each other well. And why don't we go see Sam? Now, Sam was back, and he was in the basement. Jay had a small office, and below was this dark, dank place. I don't even know if there were lights, there were electric plugs and stuff, so there's light over the desk, and there's light coming from the drawing room. And up high were these little spots with mesh where the light would come in. It was a basement. And we came over and we saw Sam, and Sam turned around, and Sam always spoke. He spoke in a low, slow voice. I don't know how you guys do it. And he went on to explain. Jay Ward has told him he has to do a picture, 6-minute picture, in 2 weeks. And he says, I work 10 hours a day. I take the work home. I work weekends. I can't get it done. How do you guys do it? And I didn't know we were going to answer in unison with Bob Dranko, and I said, we don't. The thing is, Bob and I were taking 4 weeks. We got paid by, I guess, the weeks, but we were getting paid for 4 weeks' work. And Jay was not known for paying his employees well. So, for Sam, I think we were making 5 times as much as Sam wailing away in that basement. And we weren't working as hard. Sam always worked hard. Later on in his life, he had a terrible automobile accident. It was very difficult. I mean, he was in a lot of it, and it was difficult to work with. But every time you saw him, it was was just always this warm. There's something that was just funny. You see him, you smile. It's just so warm. And he would show up at the academy. It was always a struggle. He would show up at the academy screening the animation shorts. Well, you go for the short list, which means you're going to watch 70, 80 shorts. And he was there, smiling, so full of life.
Or we meet her in here.
One
And then it's
really
just a drop.
terrific guy. We call him a mensch. And for those who don't know, that means you're a good person. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. It's funny to see the photo of Sam is the only time I've ever seen Sam in shape. He always had that black brush mustache.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have recognized him. I was just going to say, with that mustache and that slow way of talk, he could do stand-up comedy. Maybe he was doing stand-up comedy. I don't know. But he got to know him. I'm sure those who know him, it was an enjoyable thing. He just made friends. He didn't make any.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to talk about Dave Creek. And to speak about Dave is Devin Roth.
Hi, everybody. So I want to just talk about Dave in the most raw, purest form, being, a guy that's didn't think that he'd be doing a memorial at such a young age, and to be talking about someone that meant so much to me as far as Dave Creek is concerned. So I wanted to talk about him as if we were sitting in a bar together and just talking about good times, because that's normally what we used to do. But I met Dave in CalArts when I was 18, and he was about a year or two ahead of me. And at the time, we kind of drew towards each other because I think he reminded me of a lot of my old childhood friends that I grew up. He was athletically fit, not that I was, but he liked athletics, and he was also a very amazing artist at the same time. And I think for me, I was having a hard time fitting in, and he was someone that easily kind of gravitated towards me and towards my group. We ended up sharing a cube together for two years, and I think the first time I actually met him, he was doing tube and throat singing in his cubicle at 3 o'clock in the morning while we were all working on our films, and he was wearing nothing but his underwear because it was so hot. And I only saw the back of him, so I thought he was completely naked, but that was literally the first time I met the guy, and I knew I was in for a treat and in for some adventures with him. So over time, I think that kind of broke the ice with our friendship, and we became really close with each other and shared amazing, great times as far as our college experience is considered. He was, definitely more on the figure drawing side of the schooling system, where I think I kind of focused more on jumping straight into animation. So I think opposites attract in many different ways there. That really was beautiful. So after CalArts, we kind of parted ways and still kept in contact. And I went into animation and really kind of had a rough start. And ultimately didn't know if I was going to be in animation at all anymore. And I think I went through a couple of years of doing Craigslist jobs and whatever I could do to keep drawing. It wasn't until, he was one of those guys that was like my brother, and someone that I could always lean on and have deep conversations with, and someone that, I think it's really hard and kind of understandable in the sense that, you know, we as people really have a hard time getting through life with companionship. And I think it's really difficult to lose someone who is as wonderful and amazing as Dave, because so much, so many things that we wanted to do for our futures. He was my business partner, my mentor, he was my best friend, really. So we kept doing, you know, multiple, he kept throwing me jobs, you know, working in commercials, so doing commercial animation. We'd find some way to work in animation and still be together. And he always looked out for me, you know, as a big brother. And even though I do have a bigger sister, I feel like he was just part of my family and someone that really understood me and took me at face value. Really took me for who I was, and with you know, scars and all. You know, right when I was at my lowest point, feeling like I was never going to get into animation again, never do anything with it, he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, you know, there's this new show called Bob's Burgers that I'm working on, and I'm doing all the you know, development work for it. So I was wondering if you would want to do some kind of interview for it." So I took the test, and I didn't think I was going to get the job, and ultimately he championed me and Lauren to give me a second chance and have the job. So we ended up doing that job together for 4 years until I split off and started going into my own direction. But every single day we spent together. We shared an office together. We shared a cubicle. We shared drinks. We shared, you know, good times, bad times. Everything you can imagine two best friends would do, we were doing. So I think, you know, what I've come to kind of realize in this experience of losing someone at such a young age is that how fragile life is, and how, you know, easy it is to take things for granted, especially when it comes to people that you love. And I love Dave very dearly. Never really got an opportunity to tell him that or express him, you know, how much I loved him. But I know he, deep down, he knew that I loved him very much. And I you know, he checked in with me more than I probably checked in with my own family. And that's something that's amazingly special. And I've probably only had, you know, a couple people in my lifetime that I can really consider best friends that will really step up to the plate and have my best interest at hand. And also tell me when I'm doing something stupid or being ridiculous. So, you know, we had our checks and balances with our friendship that I thought was amazing. And, you know, he supported me with every you know, inch of his nicest, most amazing person that I could have as a mentor. He was my lead character designer on Bob's Burgers. He gave me all the freedom in the world to really explore myself as an artist. He knew how much I loved animation and how much I wanted to be here. But he was also very, you know, he was very honest with himself and with me, and that's what I really understood about him. Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say one last thing about Dave is that as much as I have a million things to say about him, I just want him to know that I love him very much. It doesn't go by where I don't think about him, and it's going to be tough. So thank you, everybody. And, thank you very much. Thank you. We're now going to honor David DePatty, the other half of DePatty Whaley. And speaking
on behalf of David is Eugene Cilantro.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eugene Cilantro, and I am speaking today about David DePatie on behalf of Art Leonardi, who couldn't be with us today. Art writes, David was a dear friend of mine. I was saddened when I heard the news that he had passed. I have a great fondness for David. From the moment we met, I knew we would always be good friends. There are so many memories I could share, but I'll keep this short and sweet. David was a genius when it came to the animation business. He knew what he was doing. David was a joy to work for and a joy to hang out with. I owe my animation career to David. If he hadn't made the call asking me to come back to work with him on the Pink Panther in California, I may still have been in New York today. I will always be grateful to David for our friendship. David, you will be truly missed. My sincere condolences to Marcia, their sons, Steve, Mike, and David, and to their families.
Thank you very much. So we're now going to start the original speaker for John Alberto Bendazzi. So speaking for Bendazzi is Charles Solomon. Yes, you're on.
Okay, well, I did see the picture of John Alberto. When I first met Odyssey in 1997, I knew his work, of course, as a great scholar and as a writer about animation. And at the time, he was thinking about a 16-volume anthology on animation history, which he asked me to work on, saying, this will be a gift that our generation leaves to the next generation of animation scholars. That never came to pass, but over the years we discussed projects, films, books, other labors. And then in 2010, after winning a long battle with cancer, he asked me to write a chapter for his history, world history of animation, that would, the 3 volumes that you see in the photograph of him. And this is typical of his prose. I'm thinking of a text about 6,600 words with a deadline of no more than 20 days. I'm sorry I'm so stingy, I'm disorganized, but you can imagine how difficult Neil was in the last 6 months. That was a very happy collaboration. Completing the book was a horrendous struggle for him. The publisher changed when the first was talking about it. It involved writings and edits and fights and arguments, and I have a long string of emails about that saga. But it was finally completed, though he authored many other books. His World History of Animation is the most eloquent memorial, I think, to Gene Alberto. It is by far the finest book of its kind. It's essential reading for anyone interested in the history of our art form, and will remain a cornerstone of scholarship for years to come. Truly in this, I think he found that art can bring to the next generation of animation scholars. Jacques was the master of one of the most difficult recherche forms of animation, almost masochistically difficult, and that was the green screen, which was invented by Alexander Alexiev and his American wife Claire Parker, he was trying to capture the look of the etchings he did to illustrate high-end editions of books in Russia. And they came up with this, building images out of the shadows of hundreds of thousands of individual steel pins. It's something that I think we can understand intellectually, that, okay, the individual pins are almost like pixels, and each shadow contributes to the form. But can you imagine actually doing that, and how far in each pin is pressed determines how dark, how long the shadow is and how dark. I first met him at Ottawa, and he was a very thoughtful man and a very serious side. But I remember him as smiling with this mischievous sense of humor. And the first time I met him, he was closer to the image on my screen. It's the left. And he was tan and he was fit and kind of buff. And the next time I met him was in Montreal at the NFB headquarters. And he was paler and had clearly put on a little bit of weight. And I said, Jacques, what happened? And he said, I made a film. Which indicates the amount of work and the dedication that he would go on to neglect everything else to create these striking images. And his work has a very singular vision that is difficult to put into words. It's pointillist, it's mechanical, yet it's personal, it's organic, it's black and white, yet he finds through the palette of grays to suggest an entire color palette. Attempts to emulate that work in CG have all failed. You can only create an image like this on the pin screen. And Mindscape, his most famous and arguably his best film, remains every bit as intriguing as it was when he completed it in 1976. When I show it in class, it fascinates students almost 50 years later. And I'm sure it will continue to speak to audiences for another 50 years. But when I visited him in Montreal, he gave me, as a joke, a pin from the pin screen. Let's see if I can hold this upright so the audience can actually see it, that I still have. And imagine manipulating 1 million of those to create one of the images. He was an extraordinary artist and an intelligent, interesting man. Marcel Jankovic ranks among the greatest animators Eastern Europe has ever produced, which is saying something. Like most Americans, I discovered his short films in the international tourneys and other anthologies, particularly his Oscar-nominated Sisyphus that fused dynamic action, a sense of the human figure in motion, with very elegant, understated animation and singularly elegant calligraphy and brush strokes made up the figure and the rock he was condemned to roll again and again. In '73, Marcel directed János Vitéz, usually translated as Johnny Corncob, which was the first Hungarian feature being commissioned in memory of a major Hungarian poet who had written the work based on. But his masterpiece, The White Mare's Son, which he completed. This has an extraordinary, brilliant palette, an eclectic visual style that could rival Yellow's Submarine, yet it has a more coherent story based on an oral epic of Central Asia that had been brought to Europe by the earliest Hungarian settlers. And in the film, Marcel preserves the tripartite structure that's typical of folk tales and legends and myths, but that in Western films tend to get pared down. There are 3 princes, 3 princesses, 3 dragons, 3 trials that lead to the resolution of the story. And each of his characters also has symbolic significance. The hero, Tree Shaker, represents the sun at its zenith. And so he ends up marrying Princess Summerfair, who represents the height of and the most beautiful of the seasons, which is not a surprising aspect of the film because Marcel was also an extremely erudite man who wrote complicated books on symbolism and mythology. I have the one that's been translated into English. It's on solar myths. I met him in Ottawa when we were on the jury together there, and one of the first comments he made was that unlike my digital watch, we were a clockwork watch because the circular patterns of the gears and the circular movements that made up the solar system, and therefore was an appropriate way of depicting time. His work, I'm sure, will continue to inspire artists for many years to come, particularly now that White Mare has finally been issued on Blu-ray and is available to audiences here. But I cherish the personal memories of a man who's not only extraordinarily talented, but a good friend who teased me and caricatured me, and wrote letters and then wrote emails to me. And I keep a cell from White Mare on my wall as a reminder of him. Thank you.
Charles. That's great. So, yeah, I think Sisyphus was like one of the first films I saw. I think I was just starting in high school, and I really started to learn about international animation and going, wow, there's animation being done beyond Bugs Bunny and Fred Flintstone.
And that doesn't look at all like those. That something so stark and black and white. And I had just started to try and use a dip pen when I first saw it, but good Lord, you can do that with it?
Yeah, incredible. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're now going to honor Don Duga. And speaking about Don Duga is Chris Pranowski.
Hey everybody,
you're on.
I'm here to talk about Don Duga. He was an icon of New York animation and a role model for me. From Rankin Bass to Sesame Street to MTV, he left his mark on the history of our craft. Don was an inspiration to SBA students like myself because he didn't follow the rules. He made up his own rules. He didn't teach you bounce a ball. He taught you to think and to question the rules. He lifted the constraints and threw away the principles and showed me that animation was magic. And it could be anything you wanted, not what anyone says it is. Don was a beatnik, a rebel, and a true artist. He was a risk taker who encouraged us all to take risks. He even animated directly on cells with a rapid craft that's crazy. Who needs the safety net of paper, he said. He embraced the chaos and the unexpected. He lived in the moment. He would even bring in rocks he painted with psychedelic patterns from his meditation beach. He was an example of kindness, a nurturer, a guide, a free thinker, not a follower. He once brought 4 of us grubby, long-haired students to pitch a cartoon to Tony Banjo. That was a record producer, John Banjo. He heard that this Bon Jovi guy was looking to produce a short to win an Oscar. When we got there, this Bon Jovi guy asked to hear our demo. He thought we were a band, and Don was our manager. He had forgotten about producing this cartoon. But we did end up getting a cool tour of the recording studio. But that's the way Don taught. Experience, not theory. We might not have been in a band, but we did often play toy instruments in Don's class. It started with us recording a track for one of our student films. We practiced all day in that room on the 3rd floor. Don encouraged us, even though it was incredibly annoying. And since we all grew up on Star Wars, we would play the song the Ewoks played at the end of Return of the Jedi. Except we replaced the lyrics with all the words Don Duga. It was awful, but Don adored it through gritted teeth. He recognized that it was a tribute to him, the rebel, the beatnik, the one who set our minds free. We love you, Don. I love you, Don. This one's for you.
Magnificent, magnificent. Thanks, Chris. That's great. Okay, now we're going to honor Chris Duncan. And speaking about Chris is Kristen Keeps. Yep, I can hear you.
Great. Okay, that's going to be tough to follow. Thank you for the opportunity to honor my dear friend, the very talented background painter, Chris Duncan. Chris was born and raised in San Diego. As a young man, he was into surfing and skateboarding. He spoke of breaking into the backyards of homes with empty pools to skate and narrowly missed being arrested. As an adult, when he wasn't painting beaches or surfing, he loved to shape surfboards. In his backyard, he had a workshop that he dubbed his she shed, where he carved and glassed beautiful surfboards. The ocean was his passion. Chris began his career in animation at the WB in 1995. He started designing title cards and then moved on to BGM prop design and eventually settled on BG Paint. He earned 2 Emmys while at the WB, one for Pinky and the Brain and another for the Animaniacs. He had an amazing amount of BG credits. Just some of them include SpongeBob SquarePants Movie, Osmosis Jones, Robot and Monsters, Bob's Burgers, Wally Kazam, DC's Supergirl, Dora and Friends, Spider-Man, and Rugrats. In addition to his animation work, Chris also worked for Digital Domain as a matte painter. He was a prolific and talented artist. I first met Chris while working at Marvel Animation. Everyone on our color team on our production shared a small, dingy office. Rough and tough, motorcycle riding, leather jacket wearing Chris sat back to back with me as our desks were in open cubes facing the wall. Chris loved to listen to loud music through ancient headphones. Everyone in the room within earshot of him could hear the annoying din, but no one had the nerve to say anything to him. One day Chris said, "Oh shit, my headphones just broke," and thus began our friendship. This makes me laugh today because he absolutely fit that stereotype of the badass who, when you really get to know him, is just really so kind. Chris was really generous with his time and supportive of his coworkers. After his passing, one of his friends from Nickelodeon, Polly, reached out to me to share stories about him. It turns out Chris encouraged her by providing helpful critiques of her BG paint. When she told him of her interest in skateboarding, he helped her choose her first board. While at Marvel, Chris and I worked with our friend Billy. At that time, it was his first job in the industry. Chris encouraged him to pursue what he wanted to do, and he would always check in on him when he received new opportunities and remind him that he was capable. Fast forward, Billy now works at the company he always wanted to. The last time Billy spoke to him, when Chris called him to say how proud he was of him. I picture him now walking into our office, doing a little hop, outstretched arms, telling you with a huge smile, "Guess what? You're not going to believe this." That was the way he always liked to begin a hilarious story. We love and miss you, Chris, and I hope you're surfing the big waves wherever you are. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. That's great. We're now going to honor Sean Gallimore. And speaking about Sean is his wife, Deborah Jans. Deborah, you on?
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, thank you. So yes, I'm Deborah Jans Gallimore. I am Sean's wife. Thank you all for this opportunity to honor Sean among such talented and esteemed artists. Sean was only 56 when he died, and he was survived by both of his parents, older brother and sister, 2 sons, and 2 grandchildren. Sean is an artist of many trades, animator, both 2D and 3D, illustrator, pinup artist, writer, actor, director, editor, storyboard artist, stuntman, fight and safety choreographer, photographer, and martial artist. As a young boy, Sean enjoyed playing with his older brother and neighborhood friends, exploring the woods, camping out, reading comic books, and drawing with incredible natural talent and extreme attention to detail, and discovering what would become his lifelong love for martial arts. These experiences combined and inspired him to write and film his own movies, a passion that never left him. In high school, Sean dreamed of being a writer. In college, Sean studied art and then moved to California with his college sweetheart and soon-to-be first wife and mother of their 2 sons. Sean tested and found his way into animation and contributed to amazing films such as The Lion King, Hercules, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which he loves to tell of his story of his influence on Esmeralda's little more curvier on-screen presence, and Tarzan was another one he was very proud of. He worked consistently in 2D animation for 14 years, and in 2017 he was able to reconnect with many traditional 2D animators on Mary Poppins Returns, and soon after that he rolled up his sleeves and quickly learned Toon Boom to work on Space Jam: A New Legacy, which released in 2021 and was subsequently Sean's final film. Sean, his family, community, and friends were extremely proud of his animation career, and we all love to brag about him. Sean's passion for making films and artistry never waned. In 2006, he wrote, directed, and played the lead role in his feature-length film, Fight Break. I happened to audition for that film, which landed me a role, and that is how we met. We had an instant connection, and we felt that we had just always known each other. With a strong friendship, our separate lives continued over the next following years. We would occasionally find ourselves on the same film set, and in 2016, the stars aligned and we moved in together. In spring of 2019, Sean proposed, and we quietly married under a waterfall on a Thursday afternoon in November later that year. When Sean needed to ignite passion or light a fire under himself, he found inspiration in the teachings of Bruce Lee, Tony Robbins, and Dean Graziosi. We often talked about gratitude and the importance of giving back daily. He was incredibly grateful for the river outside of our cozy little apartment, that we had each other, and that we could end each day simply snuggled up together on a comfortable couch. These were our riches, and we recognized them every day. Sean had a huge heart. He loved anything to do with love, and he had an infectious laugh. He had nicknames and inside jokes for all of his close friends that were special and unique to them. And television shows like The Office soon became his go-to for a good old mood lift. On the morning of Wednesday, October 20th of 2021, he followed his same typical weekday routine. He got up early and tackled the first item on his to-do list, which was to film a martial arts video for his Mastermind online course. He wraps up filming a few minutes past 9 and goes to sit in his desk chair. I look up at him to ask him how the video went, and I immediately realize that something is wrong. And at 9:13 a.m., I am calling 911. He passes almost immediately. It took 2 very long weeks to receive the information that Sean died almost instantly from a heart attack, and I'm told there was nothing I could have done that would have saved him. My brain knows this fact. My heart and my conscience do not. Sean was beloved by his friends and family, and his sudden passing came as an incredible shock to everyone who knew him. Sean was not a big fan of big social gatherings. He did like to make swift and silent getaways. So, I guess it's fitting that he left us all so suddenly. No long, drawn-out goodbyes. He just vanished like a ninja. A fighter to the end and an inspiration to us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to honor Gibbs. And speaking about Myrna Gibbs is Barbara Donatelli.
Barbara Donatelli, and this is a remembrance of my friend Myrna Gibbs, who was 84 years old. Her birthday was February 28, 1937. She passed away on September 28, 2021. Myrna Gibbs was an exceptional inker. She worked with Ken Lundy and Art Leonardi on the main titles for The Wild Wild West, The Glass Bottom Boat, and the Pink Panther movies, and also Charlie the Tuna commercials. Myrna had a little studio in her den at home with ink and paint, a good desk, a good chair, and good lighting. When Myrna got out of
of high school, she was hired by Disney, where she was trained in the art of ink and paint until the Xerox machine came along. She also worked on Mr. Magoo and then worked at DePatie Breathing from 1964 to 1980. Myrna also worked for Bill Melendez Studios. She did a lot of wonderful presentation work, hand inking and painting, the Art Leonardi drawings to sell the shows to the television networks, NBC, ABC, CBS. Myrna was always at her best, hand inking and painting with a brush and a pen. Myrna was married to John Gibbs, who was an animator at the Patty Breathing and Marvel. They had a sailboat and Oxnard, which they both enjoyed. Myrna was an animal lover, pet dogs, cats, etc. One day she came to work with a stray baby bird who had fallen out of the nest. She proceeded to feed the bird with her pinched fingers as if it was the mother bird's beak, and that little bird survived due to Myrna's care. We kept in touch through the years with birthday and Christmas cards. She called to wish me a happy birthday in July, sounding very weak, frail, and now, at that time, living in a convalescent home. That was the last time we spoke. Myrna passed away on September 28, 2021. She was 84 years old.
Excuse me, I left the mute on. Oh, actually, too, while we're at it, I hope you like my surroundings here. I hadn't mentioned it, but I usually try to pick something that's not too ecumenical, because this is really a non-denominational event. So this is actually one of our downtown Hollywood movie palaces, the Los Angeles Theater on Broadway. So I figured it's a temple to film, so it'd be appropriate. Anyway, we're now going to speak about Peter Greenwood, and speaking about Peter is Jerry Beck.
Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. I hope you can hear me and all that.
Yeah.
I was talking to our other friend Sydney before, and I thought she had somebody else, but I'm gonna read it. Okay. Here we go. Greenwood was born in Sydney, Australia. Was a screen and voiceover actor, special effects technician, researcher, designer, and media consultant. He was related to English stage and screen actress Joan Greenwood. Both were known for perfect English. Peter was best known for his work on Pirates of the Caribbean, as crew voices for Black Pearl, The Rescuers Down Under, Flunky, starring Vincent Van Patten and Farrah Fawcett, and where he was the assistant to the producer. He started at age 15 in Hanna-Barbera, Australia, as a cell painter on Popeye and the Flintstones in the licensing department. Apparently, he befriended Grim Knapwick at that point in time. His first U.S.-based voice work was on the Art Clokey-produced Gumby Adventures remake, where he voiced over 20 characters. He created and painted many of the miniature props as a skilled prop maker. In his honest casting, Peter read for The Rescuers Down Under in an audition setting for what he was told was just the voice of the airplane captain, which was to be vetted by the Australian Airlines Qantas. At his reading, they asked him to just read the radio voice from the dialogue and then improv a news broadcast, which he did all for months. He heard nothing from the studio until 2 weeks before the film was to be released. They called and told Peter he had the part of the airline captain, to which he asked, well, when will I record the part? They said, no need to, your audition was perfect. We're just going to use that. It ended up being the opening lines of Australian dialogue as the film begins. For WB's West for Camelot, Peter did the scratch track for Eric Idle's character Devon, the two-headed dragon, the tall, polite head. He was told by the recording engineer that Don Rickles, who voiced the other character head, had heard Peter's track and spoke some kind words. In later years, he was a consultant and employee of Richard Fleischer in Brentwood, the Fleischer Studios, for Betty Boop. Consultant and product designer for Roddenberry.com on Star Trek, in addition to Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Clash of the Titans. He was a costume and special effects technician on an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and on the movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Since 2006, Greenwood had been worldwide licensing manager for Jack Chertok Television, best known for The Lone Ranger, My Favorite Martian, and researching and restoring film footage of My Living Doll, starring Julie Newmar. Walking encyclopedia of information, he had been sought after as a consultant for older television projects, books such as Brady Bunch History and The Moose That Roared, Star Trek History, Space by Flint Mitchell. Co-edited several special issue magazines on The Simpsons, Addams Family, The Munsters, and James Dean. He was the supervising producer on the American adaptation of the sci-fi series Red Dwarf under executive producer Linwood Boomer. For the home video, he oversaw DVDs and extras for Alias Smith & Jones, Laramie, Wagon Train, 87th Precinct. He was the lead art director and production supervisor on Mickey Dolenz' self-produced album, Moselle. And I met him, I worked with him a little bit, I knew Peter, very nice guy.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, I knew Peter too, and yeah, his enthusiasm for film and animation and all of this marvelous. We were talking once about the Disney designer Harper Goff, who designed the submarine from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and he actually sent me over a scale model reproduction of the submarine from 20,000 Leagues, done from the original schematics that they used to create the actual prop itself. So wonderful man. All right, we're now going to honor Troy Gustafson. And speaking about Troy is John Weber.
John Weber. Troy Gustafson was a co-worker of mine and one of my best friends who is like a big brother to me. I think most industry veterans are aware that every story has an external and an internal narrative. The external part of the story is what we see on the surface, but the heart and meaning of the story blossoms from its internal aspects. For example, in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey is a young man who has big dreams of traveling the world and becoming a successful engineer. He's trapped in his small town because the sacrifices he must make for others never provide the opportunity for greener pastures. That's the external aspect of the story. The internal aspect is about discovering how one's life impacts another and how truly blessed George Bailey is. With this in mind, I wanted to pause and reflect on the external and the internal aspects of Troy's life. First, the external. Troy was born in Nebraska to a blue-collar family. His parents were Eldon and Val. He had two brothers, Ross and Jim. He went to community college and then joined the Army to become an ambulance driver. He married the love of his life, went to the Kansas City Art Institute where he landed an internship with Walt Disney Feature Animation at their Orlando, Florida studio. He spent 15 years working for Disney as an effects animator on classics like Lion King and Mulan before rising to supervising animator on other films such as Lilo and Stitch and Brother Bear. For a time, he worked at Tom Ignite's Miracle Studios in Wisconsin before joining the Savannah College of Art and Design for another 15 years. I was blessed to know him both at Disney and at SCAD. He was the cornerstone of our 2D animation program. He was immensely popular with the students and adored by his colleagues. Many professionals in the animation industry today have benefited from Troy's mentoring. So what is Troy's internal story? This is really the great drama that plays out in each and every one of our souls as individuals. I often think of the sufferings endured by Bilbo Baggins on his journey to Mordor. I cannot speak of the specifics of the battles that Troy had fought in his life, and there were many, but he was a man who took his Christian faith seriously. He trusted his soul to Christ for his redemption. He never looked down on anyone because he knew that he could struggle just as much as anyone else could. He understood that the church was nothing more than a hospital for sinners. He feared God's judgment and not man's. Most of us know his love for John Wayne, and he grew great inspiration from this quote: "Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway." So when I saw him on the last day before he died, I drove up to Atlanta, and I walked into the hospital room, and I saw the surprise in his eyes, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And he was on light morphine, pulled me close. He said, I'll see you again. I'll see you again. And we prayed and we hugged and he whispered his favorite Bible passage. This is John 3:16. He said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Troy never faltered on the faith in his last moments. He persevered until the end. And that's where I find the resolution to the internal story of his life and the true measure of a man. He was scared in his fight against leukemia, but he trusted God, he kept fighting, and he saddled up anyways. Troy's death marks the end of an era for me, but I will never forget my brother. I love him very much. When I look back on his life, I truly see a blessed man. It's a wonderful life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have the honor, and I hope I don't massacre the pronunciation. Angel Izquierdo, and speaking on his behalf is Raul Garcia.
Hello, I'm Robert Garcia, and I would like to talk about he didn't know it, but he was a role model for me. We started in Spain, working at almost at the same time. By that time, we were working with cartoon Hanna-Barbera, working on Saturday morning films that require basically from the beginning, I had a very clear idea that he was animation, but he wanted more. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. Especially he wanted to be his own boss. He wanted to do his own movies, his own terms. And that was quite amazing in those times. 78, close to 80s, because no one in Spain had that vision. Everybody was happy doing some stuff without worrying about anything else. And he was one of the persons who made me think seriously about animation in terms of quality survives, quality is eternal. He, in a world where everybody was doing like the little, like 5 drawings of head up, head down, and W poses for characters talking, he was really getting into animation, into what the character was thinking, and to put in some extra love to otherwise a mundane job. So he was a firm believer that the quality was important in animation, and so how I learned that from him. Later on, he actually opened his own studio, Remembrance, with his partner, Duncan, that not only was a studio dedicated to keep the flame of that quality animation alive, but he started training a whole generation of people doing his own films, working as a studio services for any other. And it was really, really interesting because he was doing what we all wanted to do, have the customer, and it's like working at our own projects. And when I left Spain to start my international career working at Paris, the Asterix films, it took me quite a lot of convincing to get him out of his comfort zone in his studio and bring him to the international light to work as an animator in the Asterix films. And I think that was the best thing that could happen to the world, and obviously to him, because that working in that studio made everybody else in animation learn about how wonderful and how amazing it was. And for him, I think it was some kind of liberation in terms of finally being able to give the top of talent working in his films. To the point that when the film was over, ways, all these connections, and he built this reputation of being amazing. Came back to Spain, reopened his studio, and started a really incredible career, where actually his dream became reality when he started directing and producing his own films.
and getting like the chains of a bike and building himself.
Or whatever that is.
That contraption, yes. What started, were like toying with little Ataris, trying to figure out work. He was incredible. When he started his own career films, and he was interesting because he always considered him able to and sometimes I was wondering, you miss drawing, you miss he always said that he was the happiest man in earth because what he wanted to do was be drawn, things to happen to be made out of drawings. And for him, telling the stories were really important. Directing animation was directing film. He was never sorry that he was was making film, creating films and inspiring a whole generations of I never say thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. We're next going to honor Don Jerwich, and speaking about Don Jerwich is his daughter. Dave, you're muted, I think. Yep.
I'll say thank you, Tom.
Here we go.
A short letter from Jennifer about her dad, Don Jerwich. My dad was a great hugger. When I tried to think back to my earliest memories of him, I remember a big smiling guy coming toward me with his arms open for a bear hug. That's pretty much my dad in a nutshell. I always knew I was extremely lucky to have him for a father, but of course, now that he's gone, that's become even clearer. I moved in with my dad when I was 14. At the time, he was 45 years old, divorced guy, living alone in Studio City, working at Hanna-Barbera. I didn't think about it at the time, but I have to imagine that my moving in was a major upheaval of his life. It wasn't for me because I was finally getting to live with my fun parent, and it seemed like living with him would be terrific. As a parent myself now, I can imagine how disruptive that must have been for him. I'm guessing it's like getting a puppy but magnified by 1,000. When I first moved in, we sat down together and designed my new bedroom. It was a dream come true for a young teenager in the late 70s. I had a brass bed at the time. I was obsessed with the color purple. My dad sketched giant clouds on one wall, which we painted together in various shades of purple. His idea was to make me feel like his home was my home. And I loved that room. My dad and I were a pretty good team. We ate a lot of takeout, but we also made some decent meals for ourselves. We barbecued a lot, shish kebab, chicken, hamburgers. We had an electric wok, and I believe it or not, my dad made a bean stir fry. We went to screenings at the Academy on Sundays nights. We took road trips to Carmel, leaving a crack of dawn so we could stop for pancakes at PC and Anderson's on the way. I always had my nose in a book during the drive, and he was always trying to get me to look out the window and enjoy the scenery. Look, cows. I'd look up, grunt, and then go back to my book. For my 21st birthday, my dad threw me a surprise party. Somehow, he was able to get in touch with my friends, and miraculously, they kept the secret. I was truly, truly surprised and deeply grateful. People will sometimes ask, what is the important thing your parents taught you? The only answer that I've come up with is the Don Jerwich motto of procrastination. Never do something today if you can put it off until tomorrow. The other important thing is this. My dad, he always told me he loved me. That went along with the bear hugs I mentioned earlier. And the final most important thing I learned from my dad is something he showed me, that love is infinite and boundless. Because even though he loved me so much, when
Edna joined our lives, he loved her as much. When his grandson Kyle came along, he had just as much love for him, maybe even a little more. The well of love in my dad was endless, and for that I will be forever grateful. That's Don Jones, quite a producer at Hanna-Barbera. Thank you.
Okay. We're now going to honor Osamu Kobayashi. Sorry, we're going ahead to Linda Khan. All right. Okay, let me have that. Oops. Yes, I'm sorry, my bad. I was jumping ahead. Okay, we're going to do Linda Khan, and speaking about Linda is Linda Saminsky. Hey, Linda.
Thank you. Hey, Tom. Thank you very much, and very honored to speak about Linda Khan today. She was a key builder of the children's media industry as far back as the 1980s. I met her the summer of 1984 at Nickelodeon when I was still in college and working at the tiny startup that was Nickelodeon. And Linda sat near me, and she was so nice and friendly, and she would even talk to me, a lowly college student. At that time, she was head of acquisitions for Nickelodeon, and she was the person who would go out to markets and find cartoons like Belle and Sebastian and Danger Mouse and bring them back. And she was a key part of the team that figured out the original 1980s Nickelodeon brand. And she also helped start up Nick at Night. Again, she was the person who went out to the markets and found the brand-defining series like Donna Reed and Mr. Ed. Now, our paths crossed more regularly when she began selling the Nicktoons worldwide in the 1990s. She was the first person who took Rugrats and Doug and Ren and Stimpy out to the international broadcasters, and this was before Nickelodeon was even in other countries. After 12 years at Nick, she moved over to Scholastic, and there she was heading up international television sales and marketing, and she was selling shows like Clifford and Magic School Bus and Word Girl internationally. And then we also worked together again when she was selling The Cat in the Hat knows a lot about that internationally for the Canadian company Portfolio. She was the board president of the New York chapter of Women in Film in 2003 through 2005. And most recently, and I worked with her in this job as well, she was at Bridge Multimedia, where she was helping to make educational series accessible to blind and disabled students and viewers. Linda Khan was a fantastic person. She was friendly, she was funny, and she lit up any room she walked into. We had bonded early on over our shared name, Linda, and I remember showing her an article in a magazine about a convention for people named Linda. And I remember telling her they should just call the event Linda Khan after her, and I would be happy to join her there. I miss her terribly. I often still think about things I'd love to talk to her about, and I'm happy that I could help remember her today. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We're now going to honor Osamu Kobayashi, and speaking on his behalf is a message from Yoshihiro Shimizu, read by Ray Kazara.
Thank you, Tom. And our thanks to Mr. Shimizu for sharing his remembrance with us. I didn't have a single opportunity to work with Mr. Kobayashi. Yeah, we went for a drink several times. Actually, he had an idea to turn Triton of the Sea, a manga work authored by Osamu Tezuka, into an animation work. Well, I wanted to hear his idea just frankly over drinks. Accordingly, he kindly accepted my offer. In his early career, he worked mainly as an illustrator or a designer, but he came to be interested in animation after his engagement in video game production. That was when I believe we first met. He recognized Triton of the Sea as an appropriate textbook to teach children the richness of the ocean. Now, everybody talks about SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, claiming the importance of nature protection, but he already did it almost 20 years ago. Such foresight was one of his attractions. He was also a multi-talented man. He was an illustrator, writer, storyboarder, director, and performed all those tasks without difficulty to attract the audience to his works. I did want to see his character designs in art settings for Triton of the Sea, which unfortunately wasn't realized. Or maybe it was for the best. I would have missed him a lot more if I had seen him. Mr. Kobayashi and I were connected on Facebook. I still remember his posting about his journey to New York. He wrote excitedly about his experiences with views, structures, cultures, and cuisines. Osama-chan, please enjoy making animation in heaven too. May your soul rest in peace.
Did you have any
The
more
words of
that you
Yoshihiro
wanted to
Shimizu.
Nope.
That's it.
That's it.
We did it.
Success.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I met Mr. Kobayashi at Ghibli. I was there one year for a student festival, and I dropped in, and we had a nice cup of tea together. So anyway, we now honor Fred Ladd, and speaking on behalf of Fred Ladd is his daughter Jennifer. Are you on, Jennifer? Can we hear you? Hello? Anybody there? Oh, I hear voices.
Okay, hi. They just activated me. I don't see a. Okay.
I see you. There you are.
Made it in.
Okay, you're on.
Yeah, thank you so much. It feels so appropriate to follow the prior honoree, Mr. Kobayashi. Thank you so much. And thank you to Frank Gladstone and Tansito, of course, for inviting me to speak about my father, Fred Ladd, and to the Animation Guild's 2021 Memorial Committee as well for organizing this important event. As many know, my father was the pioneer who brought Japanese animation, anime, to the Americas, North and South, and to the English-speaking world across the globe. Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, Gigantor, and G-Force. He played a creative role in Speed Racer and Sailor Moon 2, and also adapted the Pippi Longstocking films for CBS, and produced so many other wonderful tales with engaging storylines, including ones that he wrote himself. And everything he wrote, directed, produced, had potent messages folded into it. As a child, I watched over and over a captivating public service announcement he'd done with an anti-hate message, which is still obviously vital for our time too. And folded into him was something intensely Gigantor-like, stronger than strong. In his 90s, he was still doing vigorous workouts at the gym, and he walked everywhere with such a quick pace we had to work to keep up with him. He was incredibly productive throughout his life, including past his 80s, writing a series of engaging children's stories and poems. And that amazing capacity for work never ceased because he loved what he did. And the humor that runs through his work was so much a part of his character. He was the life of every party, telling jokes. During a trip to the Griffith Observatory, he lectured the statue of Albert Einstein. If you'd listened to me, you would have amounted to something. And one Sunday morning, when we visited a beautiful garden to relax there, our father kept looking at his watch, and my brother says to him, "It's Sunday. What could you possibly be in a hurry for?" And our father says, "I'm in a hurry not to be here." He was eager to get back to work. He was always ready and eager to jump into the next project. He loved being immersed in those creative projects, and the more challenging, the more he enjoyed it. He loved to entertain, to work with others, and to share his work, as he did with ASIFA, which he enthusiastically supported, as you know. My brother, Jed Laderman, also is attending today, and he shares these thoughts and these sentiments, and we thank you for letting us share today our fond memories of our father, Fred Ladd.
Thank you very much. So now everybody together. Rocket high to the sky. Everything. Go Astro Boy. All right. So we are now at the halfway mark.